Hello, and welcome to Pique My Interest, the show dedicated to creativity. My name is Scoob Decker, and I am an artist, and your host. Pique My Interest is an exploration of art across North America in meeting some incredible artists, learning about their craft, and exploring what makes them create. Welcome to Pique My Interest. Hello, and welcome to Pique My Interest. I am currently in Bozeman, Montana, sitting in this awesome studio / garage of sorts with this incredible artist. How are you doing today?
I'm great. How are you?
I'm doing excellent. This has been a long time coming.
I know.
We've missed each other. It feels like years now. So I just want to say thank you for finally getting together with me on my crazy road trip across the country, and we're finally going to learn a little bit about Hyalite. But before we do that, please pique our interest. What is your name and where are you from?
Hi, my name is Katie Stylos, and I am originally from Meridian, Idaho, but now I'm living in Bozeman, Montana.
And what is your craft?
I am an artist who makes art out of old climbing rope.
A rope artist?
A rope artist.
And what is your specialty within rope art?
Oh, gall. I don't know. I think the specialty is making landscape images out of the climbing rope.
Yes.
Does that make sense?
Absolutely.
Yeah. So mountains, lakes, rivers, beautiful places brought to life through climbing rope.
Yes. I think if you see any of Katie's work, it's very evident that her landscape, her mountain ranges, her skies are just stunning. And then you dive into what the material actually is, and that's when you get to see Katie's creativity blossom. So before we get too far into Hyalite, what is your background? Do you have any education in art?
Yeah, so my background, honestly, for a lot of my life, I wouldn't have called myself an artist. I worked in the horse world, and I did a lot of physical labor, and I think there was always a part of me that enjoyed doing art, but it was never like doing it all the time, or I had something that I loved to do that was artistic. And art really didn't come into my life until I was kind of at a crossroads and was working at a climbing gym and trying to decide, do I work at a climbing gym forever, or what do I want to do career-wise? And my dad was in the military, and he had the GI Bill, and he was like, if you want to go to school, right now is the time to do it, because this is going to expire, and you're not going to be able to use these resources. And so I literally went to the college that is in Bozeman. I picked up a pamphlet of what they offer for career degrees, and I saw graphic design, and I was like, well, that's I'd always thought of art as like a skill, something you could learn, something that you can expand upon and make it yourself. And I liked the idea of being able to be creative, but kind of being able to choose what direction I wanted my career to go in an artistic way. So I decided to become an artist and go to school to be an artist.
Excellent. And before we get into the schooling a little bit, what about your upbringing? What about working with the horses made you want to make art?
Yeah, my life with horses, I was very much that classic horse girl, the folders, the everything, all my passwords were the horse that I loved at the time, that kind of thing. And it's hard for me to try to really link my horse part of my life with my art part of my life, because they were really, really separate things. I never felt like the art happened at the same time as the horse thing. But I think the things that the horse world, when I look back at it now, has contributed to my art is this idea of connecting to something. And because that's the biggest thing I miss about the part of my life that I had with the horses, is this deep connection that you had with an animal, or this physical effort with something else, and a horse, right? And so that was really special. And so it was this idea of and when I look at the art now, it's this is a way for me to connect to a place and connect to a artistic thing or creative thing that expresses me, and kind of who I am. And so it's hard to like really be like, oh, horses did this, or horses, contributed to this in this way, because I think I got burned out on horses. And when I look at my art now, I never want what happened with the horses to happen with my art. So I've kept every kind of piece of my life really separate for that reason. And so, but I would be lying if I said that the horses didn't contribute in some way.
Right.
If that makes sense.
For anybody who's an animal lover, the connection that you have with a creature is indescribable.
Yeah.
The bond that can be created, and then whether or not you let that go, but to be able to find something else to kind of tap into that connection.
Mm-hmm.
And as artists, it's again hard to explain, but to find that connection with an art piece, let alone your own craft, is very magical. So
right.
Thank you for pursuing that and showing us that. But let's get further into the graphic design. What did you want to do with graphic design?
Mm-hmm. Yeah. So like I mentioned before, I got really burned out on the horses. And so graphic design was something, I wanted a career that I was my own boss and I could go and travel and take time off and, pick my hours and have a little bit more control than going to a job and getting scheduled and the whole thing. But I also wanted a job that I felt like was kind of a challenge and had some problem solving elements to it. And I really loved that part of design work where it's like, okay, you have somebody that comes to you and they say, I'm opening up a donut shop and it's in this part of town and this is the kind of type of people I want to bring in, but we're going to play this type of music and I hate this color and have all of these different aspects and then bring that to life. Like to be able to have a conversation with somebody and then be able to have a visual idea of that in my head and then bring that to life for somebody else and then go back and forth and work with somebody to bring what they're hoping to have like to life for them is really special. And so that's why I love design work. It's been an incredible experience to meet people who are also on the path usually of they're starting their own business and they're also on their own endeavor of doing something, kind of taking a leap with their career. And that's been great to connect with people on.
And that brought you to Bozeman.
No, I wasn't into design work until after I moved to Bozeman.
Oh, wow.
Yeah.
Oh, okay.
Yeah. The design work did not come until after I moved here because I was working at the climbing gym and I was like, what am I doing with my life? And then I decided to go to school and then got into the design work from there.
So while you're climbing, if you don't know, you deal with a lot of climbing ropes.
Yeah,
so
exactly.
So what piqued your interest about these ropes and what inspired you to turn these devices to help you climb into art?
Yeah, so anybody who is a climber, and honestly, I guess everybody in the world, like we have a lot of waste and it's no different in the climbing world. And so as somebody who worked in a climbing gym, we would have people come to the front desk and they'd be like, oh, I have this old rope. Like, do you guys recycle old ropes? And we'd take it for them, but then they just sit in the corner and they wouldn't do anything and nothing would happen with them. And you just watch this thing that was designed for one thing and then nobody ever thinks about the life of that thing after it's done doing the thing it was designed for. And so I was working with a gal who's also a local artist and she was making rugs out of rope art. And I was like, oh, it's something I can probably figure out how to do too. And like asked her some questions and she answered them. And then I was making them for myself and then I was making them for my family and she got out of it and she was like, do you want all of my rope? And I was like, sure. So, and at the time it was like, a few of these, like probably that section was her pile of rope. And so I took hers and then I just started rolling with it. And I was like, well, I'll just, put one of these on Facebook Marketplace and maybe somebody will sell it or want to buy it. And it's really just kind of taken off from there. So I kind of had her blessing and that's where it went.
Yeah. It's interesting. We were talking earlier about a lot of things in humans' lives but a lot of times ropes can have this odd sentimental value. People get very connected with their ropes. I climbed this mountain, or I achieved this with this rope. But then in turn, they just kind of have it there sitting there. But you're able to kind of transfix it into something that can resemble what they climbed or something that they achieved, to give it even more meaning, to give it more of a story behind it. What drew you to create mountains and landscapes over anything else?
Yeah, I think for me, so when I got out of horses, I lost that thing that I really connected with. And so going into the mountains was a way for me to kind of find that connection to something bigger than myself. And so to me, it just made sense to do landscape work. And I've like made a few things in the past of random things that aren't landscape. And it's just, it kind of feels like I'm doing it because it needs to get done versus because I want to do it. Versus the landscape work is a way for me to connect to places that I've been or help people connect to places that they've been. And it makes it that much more special when you're like somebody hands you the rope and they're like, oh yeah, this was my very first climbing rope, or this is the rope that I climbed the Grand Teton with my dad and he's no longer with us. And it's a way to take something that would be trash or just sit on the floor and somebody's like, yeah, that's a cool rope, but it's just sitting there getting dusty. And then you can bring it into an art piece and then you have this memory of this physical representation of whatever you did with XYZ person or a place that means a lot to you with an actual item that is like, was there with you in that moment, if that makes sense.
Absolutely. And I guess the answer is it just kind of makes sense.
Yes.
Hyalite Designs is what your business is called. What is Hyalite?
So Hyalite is a type of opal, and there's a canyon just outside of Bozeman that's called Hyalite Canyon, and it's the place that I think, like, not to get all weird, but like my soul's connected to. It's really special to me. It means a lot to me, and so it just made sense to call my business Hyalite Canyon because it's kind of that. It's my place of connection. It's the place that I love. Absolutely. So, but yeah, it's a really beautiful soft stone that you can actually find up in the canyon if you're willing to go searching.
Yeah. Wow. And that's, I was able to stay in Hyalite Canyon not too long ago, and it is just stunning. It's
beautiful.
Gorgeous. And what I love about your work is it resembles the landscape and the mountains so precisely. Like, you can look at a mountain and go, one of your mountains, and be like, oh yeah, no, I just saw that in Glacier Park, or that kind of looks like Yellowstone. And so I think your craft, and you've been able to hone it in to be able to resemble very specific mountains. I think that is connecting people to these pieces a lot more. But you also said that you've started your own company. You started selling these pieces for a couple thousand a piece sometimes. To me, congrats, you're successful. What is success in your world of your craft, and do you find yourself successful, and what really got you succeeding?
It's hard to know what defines success when I think about my business, because I think for me, there's a part of, I would call this is my job. Like, it's not, so, and I think when you look at it logically, success is that my job allows me to be able to live, right? I'm financially supporting myself. But it's also successful in that I think people get it. Like, it's really wonderful to talk to you and have the conversation with you. And when you talk about it, I'm like, oh, you get it. Like, you understand it. You understand the connection and what I'm trying to say with the rope. And that in itself is, to be seen and to be heard, feels like a success. Does that make sense?
Yeah, absolutely.
And so that means a lot. But there's also the part of this whole thing that's like, okay, well, my design work and all of that's on the side that nobody really ever sees is kind of cool, because it is like the hidden part of my job that I kind of have, like my computer work, and it's very successful and it's like doing its thing. And then I have this like other side of my job that's totally kind of flip side artistically, of like, instead of being in front of a screen, you're doing something with your hands. And this feels very successful because stuff sells out, right? You have that, you have this representation, but it's also successful. And then I feel like I'm getting to express myself in multiple ways across my platform of being an artist.
Yeah.
I get to be the designer who's making the things for the people who are doing similar things to me in regards to going out there and putting themselves out there. But then I'm also getting to express myself as an artist through my rope art. Because this is the part of my art that is really me. And then the design work, making logos for people, that's where I'm making art for somebody else. Whereas like this is my art that's like, this piece is me. Yeah. This is where I represent kind of who I am as a person. So,
and I would also argue your success is being able to tie in your parted artistic side and then to be able to incorporate your technology side and know how to sell your art and how to advertise your art.
Right.
And to me, I mean, that's a huge form of success, because how many artists create something and then it never gets seen, or obviously it's not going to get sold if the person doesn't know how to advertise it. So to me, I think that's got to be one of the biggest forms of success, is combining your graphic design with your artistic side, with the technology, to let Hyalite flourish. But now I think it's time to get into it a little bit.
Yeah, let's do it.
Tell me a little bit about your creation process. How do you decide which mountains, which rivers, what sky to make?
Yeah, that's a great question. It has been an evolving process over the years. Like, it's obviously not a common thing that people do. So there's not like a playbook that's like, this is, step 1 is this, step 2 is this. So it's been, this has changed. So my now process is, depending on if I'm making a custom piece for a person, or if I'm making a piece that is for a drop, one that I'm just going to sell on my website, is kind of different. So if I'm selling the piece on my website, if I'm making a piece just for myself, I will, figure out like what mountain do I want to do. And usually I try to pick mountains that I know people will relate to. A common mountain for me is like the Grand Teton, Mount Rainier. Like those are always ones that I always do. But then there's always the handful that somebody will comment on one of my posts on Instagram and they'll be like, do Mount Thielsen in Oregon. And like, I've never seen that mountain. And so I'll go look it up. And if it's like, I was like, oh my God, that's a beautiful mountain, I'd love to go there someday. Sure. That mountain speaks or says something to me.
Yeah, each mountain's got so much character.
Yeah. And like some mountains I'm like, I don't really, it's fine. Right. But there's some mountains where I'm like, oh, that thing is amazing. Or it's like, I get it. Right. It's like.
Only a Montana girl would be like, I'm going to judge that mountain. No, that one's a pretty good one.
I do judge them. I look at them all the time. But there's some mountains that speak to me more than others. So I'll pick one that speaks to me. Maybe it's one that I want to go to, or there's like a special story behind it, or the name, or whatever. And then from there, I usually I like to, when I'm designing the piece itself, I like to sit in here because I can see all the rope that I have right now. And I will usually choose probably like between 4 and 6 images that I can find and combine them onto an iPad and on like Procreate and like figure out a composition that makes a lot of sense. And then from there, I'll start drawing on top of those images. So I can try to be as accurate as possible with the mountain, but I'm not necessarily copying straight from a single photo, right? And then as I'm adding color into Procreate, I go ahead and I look at the rope that I have right now on my wall, and then that's where I create the color palette, and I have an idea of which ropes I want to use from the beginning. From there, I put it into Adobe Illustrator. I grid the whole thing out to size, and then my husband usually helps me with cutting the plywood. I know. And
can't do it by yourself.
I know. We cut the plywood, we sand the plywood, put the holes in it to be able to hang it on a wall. And then I grid the whole thing out. I draw it by hand. And then we add the border. And then I start putting in the outlines and then filling it in.
Yeah, I'm very lucky sitting in your studio right now. I see one of these wood pieces with a nice rope frame around it. and you have sketched out a little drawing of, I can already see the mountains and the river, and I wish I could just watch you work for hours and put these ropes in there. But I do want to talk about these colors.
Amazing,
and
right?
No offense to my black and white artists, Emin and Josh, your work is incredible, but I love color.
Me too.
And behind you is just this plethora of rainbow colors. And how on earth do you pick which colors get to go onto these mountains? And each one has got to tell a whole different story.
I love color. I've always thought about color. I think about color when I'm climbing and the outfit that I want to wear while I'm climbing. I think about color in the studio. Like, it's something that's always on my mind. The thing I love about color is the feeling you can portray through color. And because everything that I do is basically color patchwork, so much of the piece and the feeling of the piece is going to come through that color of the rope. And so when I'm looking at the ropes themselves, I'm like, am I going for a bright palette? Am I going for a muted palette? Like, what direction, how do I want somebody to feel when they're looking at this? That goes into all the decision making. And like, some ropes are like patterned. When you look at the rope, there's a bunch of pattern within the rope. Some rope is just totally plain. And all of that goes into the decision making of the piece itself and choosing which one. And then on top of that, you have the stories of each individual rope, right? Like, this rope was on the Teton, and this rope was an ice climbing rope, and this rope they used to pull out a truck on the side of the road. You know, it's just like, the stories are endless.
That's incredible. I can't think of any craft, which, by the way, you are absolutely trailblazing your own craft, which is some of my favorite artists to interview, because your brain is just working on a whole nother level. You are combining so many different aspects of art. You're drawing, you're designing, you're computer designing, you're doing your graphic design, you're pulling out the ropes and deciding the colors, and you're just able to combine all these different elements. And as you're going, I'm sure you might have other ideas. How much does your piece adapt or change while you're working?
It's often, but not super often. I would say that by the time the rope is getting put onto the board, almost all the decisions have been made. And it's rare that I'm changing things once I'm putting stuff down on the board itself.
So once it's kind of like gridded out, you're already like set, it's going, and then you're probably already thinking about the next one.
Honestly, by the time I get to the point where I'm putting the rope onto the board, it almost becomes like meditative. All the decision making has already been decided. All the things the colors I need to choose, the patterns I'm picking, where I want the lines to go, how I want your eye to move through the piece, that's all figured out. So it's the perfect time for me to just like kind of hone in and just enjoy the process, which is a huge reason why I love it, is because I can kind of mentally just get into that flow state of creating. Yeah, when I'm putting the rope down onto the board.
Now, as an artist, we all run into that wall of, I don't know what to do next. How do you overcome a creative block?
Oh gosh, I kind of view creative block a little bit feels, at least to me, feels a little bit like burnout. And so, I mean, there's a part of this that's like, okay, like, if I'm designing a piece for somebody else, like if I'm making a custom piece, oftentimes there's not a ton of decisions I'm making, because a lot of those decisions get made by the person I'm working with, right? I still pick out the ropes and whatever, but they're choosing a lot of the main color blocks and everything like that. But so when it comes to the just creative blocks, usually it's happening when I'm trying to make pieces for drops or whatever. But because I've experienced pretty severe burnout in my past, I've really tried to find separation and balance in different parts of my life to prevent it from happening again. So all of my work, how it's been balanced has been, I will sit down and I do a lot of work, and I do a bunch of work for the drop, and I sell all my stuff and I get it out into the world, and then I close the studio door and I leave and I go for a climbing trip. I go for a backpacking trip. I go do something that's not studio work, and I go enjoy the other things that bring joy to me in my life. And I'm always doing design work on the computer. Like, the graphic design part of my job feels like my job kind of thing. And I can take that wherever I go. But this is something I really try to protect. And so I really, like, even if I'm not feeling burned out, or if there's a tinge of it, right? Like, I'm like, okay, it's time to close up shop and go do something else now.
That leads into my next question of whether or not you have any hobbies and if they contradict or complement your craft. And I think that your biggest hobby is probably climbing, in which case it is your little bit of escape into your little world outside the art. But at the same time, it might be influencing you to go see the next mountain, or, oh my gosh, there's this new rope that I could use in some other thing. So do you have any other hobbies?
Yeah, definitely climbing is my main hobby for sure, like you said. I've recently got into knitting. That's been a really fun hobby that I love because I'm such a person who a lot of my self-worth comes from how many things I do in a day. And so the knitting has been a way for me to force myself to rest, because I can sit down on the couch and get cozy and knit and feel, my brain feels like it's doing something, but my body is resting. And so that's been a really fun new hobby. But being outside, going backpacking, like spending time in a park, reading, I'm super into romance novels. Like, that's, yeah, like, those are my things I like to do outside of the studio.
Well, to all my peekers out there, you know I'm a crocheter, and I just gotta say, welcome to the world of yarn arts.
Thank you.
It's kind of like rope art, but tinier.
Yeah, exactly. And you can wear it.
And then, going a little bit further, what would be your recommendation for somebody, maybe not necessarily getting into rope art, but trying to find their own craft, to really get into art?
Oh gosh. Yeah, I think my biggest suggestion for people who are wanting to get into art, and kind of this creative side of things, is one, deciding if you want this to be your job and to be your career, or if you want it to be something that adds joy to your life on the side. Because having been somebody who wanted to make their passion their career in the past, it ruined my passion, unfortunately. And so, like I said, I'm very protective of keeping things in separate places so they don't overlap in weird ways. There's a part of all of this that, yes, I love doing this, and it brings so much to my life, so much richness to my life. But at the end of the day, I wouldn't call this like my deep passion. I love doing it. It brings richness and everything to my life. But the thing that is my passion is climbing. Sure. I love climbing. I love it. But I would never want to make climbing my career kind of thing. And whereas this, I feel like I get to challenge myself, and it feels like my career, and I can push myself and I can make my goals. But I'm also more than happy to like put it to the side and let it be kind of thing. So I think for people who are wanting to decide, like, if you're going to make it your career, it's one of those things where it's like you have to do the crappy parts of having a career, which are probably learning a skill you don't really want to have to do. There's going to be parts of this that kind of suck. Like, it's forcing yourself to sit down and do the thing when you don't want to do it, and you don't have a boss sitting there telling you, like, hey, I need this document from you by tomorrow at 6 p.m. So it's having the drive to want to make this work for yourself kind of thing, and putting in that time to make it work, and also being okay if it takes a lot longer than you thought it would be kind of thing. So
speaking of time and money, would you recommend going to school to become an artist?
As somebody who had no knowledge in art and how it worked, yes, I would recommend going to school, or at least taking some classes on color theory and that kind of thing, because I've always looked at art as a skill that you can expand upon and you can learn. Obviously, there's some people who are just born incredible artists, but oftentimes people put lots and lots of time and lots of work into it, and they get better and better over time. And so I knew it was something that if I had a teacher and somebody who was willing to guide me and help me understand why certain compositions are good and why certain compositions are bad, and how the human eye works across work, and why certain colors speak to us in a different way. How do certain colors in different cultures speak to different people? Like, all of that stuff really matters. And having somebody there to help me along the way, and also having my peers and being willing to sit down and have critique, and learning to separate the difference of this person is critiquing my work, which doesn't have anything to do with me personally as a human, and they're just critiquing my art and not me, and separating those things is a really important thing to learn as an artist. And also learning, like, your art's not going to speak to everybody, and that's okay. Mm-hmm. And art school taught that for me. Yeah. I learned how to look at art and speak about art with other people, and I learned about how people can speak to me with art and get critique from other people, and that's huge.
It's been one of my biggest surprises in meeting Katie has been, like, I thought I was just going to meet somebody who threw ropes on a page and it just magically turned into these mountains, and you just have that magical artistic touch. But then you started talking about composition and color theory and where you want your eye to go in the piece, and I realized that, like, there is so much more behind these mountains. Like, you have got so much time and effort and artistry going into these to make them pop and to make them really stand out. I do want to bring up, if you're okay talking about it,
please.
You mentioned that you started to get a little more success when you started raising your prices. Mm-hmm. Do you agree with that?
I've always had a lot of interest in the rope art. A lot of people have been interested, but it's always been, I think all artists know, there's nobody out here telling you how much to charge for your work. It's the one thing that drives me crazy, because nobody's being transparent about it. We're all just swimming in the ocean of what do we charge. I was out here and I had a gallery reach out and they wanted to put some of my work in the gallery. And I was like, yes, let's do it. And I brought some work over and she asked me, what do I charge? And I told her, she's like, no way, you got to charge more than this. So I had feedback of somebody saying to me, like, you're not charging enough for your time that you're putting into this work, and it's unique and you should be charging more. And so I raised my prices and they continue to sell. I think there's something about, in some ways, like, I know this sounds terrible, but, like, there's something about raising your prices that makes people, like, think that they're even, like, more coveted kind of thing. And in reality, I think it's one of those where it's like, for me, I needed to raise my prices because I was putting more time into the pieces than I was getting money that made the time worth it kind of thing. So it was, like, time to raise those prices anyways. But I think it's a hard world to navigate, and what made it a lot easier for me was, like, charging by the square inch versus being like, I bet this piece is like $1,500. You know, like, it made it easier for me to navigate, because then over time it was like, okay, like, I think it's probably time we raise this piece by like 25 cents a square inch kind of thing. Yeah. And it just made sense over time to be doing that. And then now there's a part of me, because my work sells out so fast, that's like, I probably should charge more, but at the same time I've kind of capped myself in a way, because I want to keep my art accessible for climbers, for people who spend time in the mountains, and not just people who are art collectors, and not just people who are spending $10,000 on a piece of work, which is amazing and beautiful. But I also want my art to be for somebody who wants a beautiful piece of art in their home and doesn't necessarily have the means to go spend 10 grand on a piece.
I will say the accessibility of your pieces is pretty hard, because they sell out very quickly. Every time you have a drop, by the time I get around to your website, they are already sold out. So congratulations on that and pursuing your creativity.
I appreciate it.
And I will add on to what you were talking about. As an artist, the most difficult thing, besides learning your craft and going through the blood, sweat, and tears of learning that, which you probably have, you have this thing called a hot knife that you're cutting these ropes with. But in the end, there is nobody to tell you how to value your work.
Yeah.
And it's the most difficult thing to sit there and kind of go, like, okay, what's my hourly rate versus the supplies versus the materials versus how I value my own time, and as artists, we never value our own time, and
Totally.
so like, again, to be able to push through the many years of, sorry if this is the wrong word, but struggling and
No, it's
whatnot,
not.
like,
Yeah.
it just shows this work is standing apart and being able to shine through with your artistry. And then you also talked a little bit about the criticism of not necessarily your work, because looking at it, I can't see too much people would criticize, but being able to do what you do and to have somebody kind of just say like, I don't really get it. How would you handle that? And you said that before you kind of have to take it with a grain of salt, or like you said, you got to just leave the studio every once in a while. How do you handle criticism?
I haven't gotten a ton of criticism on the work itself. The most criticism I've gotten is my work selling out too fast and people not being able to buy it, which is crazy. I mean, I understand it, but that's crazy to be like, that's a problem,
It's a
right?
great problem.
And then the pricing. Some people think it's too high. And so at the end of the day, I tell myself I cannot make everybody happy. And when it comes to the pricing, I feel like I've done a really good job of being able to make a living wage for myself and paying myself for the time and the money and everything that I put into the materials. Also considering the time and the money that I put into school, and the time and money that I put into rent, and everything that goes into this costs a lot of money. The time and money that I put into my website and posting every single piece, and all the money and things that I put into spending on my whatever URL for my whatever, that stuff costs a lot of money, and you have to consider that when you're pricing. And so when people criticize the pricing, I just say that's what it has to be for me to continue doing this.
Right.
When it comes to the drops, it's just like I've done my best. I've done my best to try to make this work for everybody, and I can't. There's only one me, and the thing that I love about this is it's a slow craft. So I'm not an industrial company that can just pump out 4,000 of the same piece, and that would completely ruin everything that I've designed my business model around, which is reusing and creating something with my hands by myself, right?
Yeah,
so
and that's the highlight touch.
Right. And totally. And so when it comes down to getting that criticism, at the end of the day, I just have to say, like, I'm not going to make everybody happy. And every now and again, you get somebody that's like, oh, that's nice. And then they move on, whatever. And that's totally fine too. And I just have to know that not every piece I'm going to make is perfect. Like, I've definitely put pieces out in the world that I'm like, ooh, that could have been better. This could have been made different. And understanding that that's growth and that's how you get better. And understanding that, like, I look at the pieces that I very first made and I'm like, oh, what was I doing? Those are terrible. Like, oh God, those are the worst. But I wouldn't have been getting to the place where I'm at now as an artist if I didn't start somewhere.
Yeah.
Like, it just takes growth. It takes time. So every time I'm getting some sort of criticism, I'm like, well, I'm doing this for me, not necessarily somebody else.
Yeah.
And that has to be good enough at the end of the day.
The biggest critics of our work are going to be ourselves.
Oh,
so like,
yeah.
no matter what you say, we're going to go home and overthink everything that's been said to us throughout the day from our professors, from our second grade art teacher, and but again, to be able to push through that and pursue this art form, I just want to say thank you. And what's next for the world of Hyalite?
Gosh, yeah, I think I've kind of been in this place. Well, there's actually quite a bit of things that are coming up, but in regards to the art itself, I've hit a place where I'm like, okay, I'm wanting to challenge myself. So every drop that I've done, I've put out a piece into the world that is like a little bit different than what I usually do. And like the last drop I did, instead of using black outlines in the piece, I used orange outlines. Ooh. And I loved it. It was like one of my favorite pieces I've ever made. But it was like the last piece to sell during the drop. I mean, it still sold, right?
Yeah.
But it did not, and it sat there for everything in the last drop was crazy. So I had 18 pieces, 17 of those pieces sold out within the first 1 minute. And then the piece with the orange lines sold out at minute 3. So it still sold very fast, but it sat there and didn't go into anybody's carts. Like I was sitting and watching it. And so in a way, you're getting critique in that moment, right?
Fascinating.
And it's like, it's so crazy to be like, that was my piece of experimentation. And to be like, I saw it in my head. I knew what I wanted it to look like, and it came out exactly how I wanted it to. It came out, I was like imagining the space that this piece would live in. I was imagining the person that would own the piece. I was imagining the feeling that I wanted it to give the person. And it I was like, oh my God, it's perfect. I was so happy with it. And then for it to sell out at the end of the drop was like, I was like, I don't know, maybe that was the wrong thing to do, maybe whatever. But at the end of the day, I was like, no, that piece, it was exactly what I wanted it to be. And that's how everything that I've done so far with the rope art has started, is this is where I want it to go. And it's just kind of adjusted and changed. And so people should continue to keep an eye out for the classics, but every now and again, you're going to continue seeing a few different pieces of me pushing myself creatively, and also bringing in new ideas. It's going to still be the same rope art, but it's going to be a little bit different here and there. And then the next big thing is this studio that I've been in for 2 years now. I'm saying goodbye, which is crazy. Woo! Yeah. My husband and I were buying a house, which is going to have a new studio space, and it's going to take a long time to get up and running. But I'm ecstatic to be able to bring my vision of my workspace in that studio space to life. I think it's going to be amazing, and I can't wait to do that.
Going back to saying that artists are our own critics, even though you made something that you were so proud of and then you dropped it and it was the last thing that was sold, you got to go back and realize that was 3 minutes from you announcing it was released to it being sold. And that, as you might think as a criticism, it might just influence even more. Because when you said orange outline, I just started thinking of golden hour, and then who knows, maybe we're going to start to see some cool purples and blues to get a little bit more of a twilighty effect or something. So who knows? And you said you're going to be moving. I'm not sure when this episode will be released, so this background, who knows what we're going to see, but I'm sure Katie is just going to flourish and Hyalite is going to blossom even more. You say that it's hard to come by your work and it's hard to see it, but we can see it and enjoy it online. Where can we see your work? Yeah, so I'm most present on Instagram, and that's where I'm posting the most. I have a TikTok, but I never use it, and so you're not going to be up to date on that app at all. So my Instagram is at @Hyalite_designs, and you can go to my website and you can sign up for my email list. I mostly email people as we get closer to drops, but occasionally I'll throw out an email for custom work and opening up my website or for custom forms. And how custom work it works is you send me your idea and you send me where you live, and you send me what colors you're looking for and if there's anything significant about the place that you're wanting to get a piece of. And then it comes to me, and I have a whole thing on the back end where I can see everybody's submissions. And at this point, I've just gone for which custom piece speaks to me. It's I kind of get so many submissions that it's I just kind of have to go from what comes into the inbox. And I do custom work throughout the whole year, even in between drops. So people who don't get a piece during the drop, you should just
throw in a custom form because
you
maybe
never
you never know. Yeah, exactly.
You just might pique Katie's interest.
Exactly.
And you have a website?
Yep, hyalitedesigns.com.
Excellent. And that's where you can purchase a lot of her stuff when it is available. I can't thank you enough for joining me and piquing my interest. Is there anything else you'd like to say before we wrap up?
If you're not doing something creatively in your life, you should be. Whether that is becoming a rope artist or picking up a palette of paints or doing a little dancing or whatever it is, everybody should be challenging themselves creatively just a little bit.
Thank you. I can't reiterate that anymore. And I just want to say it is so nice to talk to a Montanan. I meet artists across North America, but being a Montanan, it is just so fun to talk Montana with somebody else, especially somebody whose craft is mountains and rivers and all whatnot. So I feel extremely connected. I cannot wait to one day get my hands on a Katie Stylos Hyalite Designs. But I do like to end with one last question.
Yeah.
If you could excel at any other craft other than your own, what would you want to do?
I have thought about this. I always say this, if I was in a different life, I would choose to be a saddle maker. Like making Western saddles for horses.
Colorful saddles?
Oh, maybe.
Ooh.
I don't know. I don't know who I would be. But like leather and the smell of leather, working with leather, the idea of how it moves on an animal, like beautiful. That's
Katie's
what I would want to do.
cow.
Oh yeah.
Oh yeah. I can't thank you enough. And thank you to all my peekers out there. Please let me know if you know of any special or unique artists or art forms you think I should explore. I am currently in Bozeman, Montana, and can't wait to see where Pique My Interest takes me next. Remember, creativity comes from the heart. Push yourselves. Be kind to each other. I'm Scoob Decker, and thank you for helping me pique my interest. This episode was produced by Lizzie Webb. Be sure to follow on social media to stay updated on all the adventures into art and creativity, as well as all of the past Pique My Interest featured artists. If you like, please leave a review. Send us a message. Tell us what you think. Pique My Interest is for you, the peakers. Cheers to creativity, and I hope your interest is piqued.